Welcome back to this clown's garage. In this video I will show you how to do a brake change on front disc brakes on a 1982 to 1992 Camaro Trans Am Firebird. Before I begin, I would like to say that perform this at your own risk. This video is for educational purposes only, and when doing brakes, especially for the first time, please have a professional watch what you're doing or check your job. So let's begin. Now what I show you here could be applied to almost any vehicle with disc brakes. However, be careful because certain cars have minor variations which are very important to follow. So check with your manufacturer's specs on what exactly you need to do for your own particular vehicle. So the first clearance I want to talk about here is this caliper here, where it meets the actual spindle, the spindle stop. This is called a stop over here. You should put a feeler gauge in here to check that clearance, and there's one on the other side too. Now let me bring it over to see, so I can show you guys what I'm talking about. That clearance and that clearance. That clearance should be between 0.13 to 0.30 millimeters. Or if you have a standard feeler gauge, it should be between 0.005 to 0.012. So you can pick up a feeler gauge at your auto parts store. It looks like a little Swiss Army knife with blades that come out. Now I already measured this before, so I'll go ahead and just show you what that looks like. You just stick it in there. Should be a nice tight fit. Get your minds out of the gutter. And this one here is 0.15 millimeter, and the other side is 0.20 millimeter. It says it right there. So we're in spec. We is good. All right. Now, if this isn't in spec, it could mean a bunch of things. Either your car was really hit pretty badly, and this bracket's out of whack, or something's loose and worn. Like it could be the sleeve in here that's worn, creating a different clearance in here. Or simply there's debris or some sort of surface type of, be it brake dust or something like that, or rust or whatever you have over there. So you can, if it's lower than spec, you can just go in and foul it down the stop on the actual spindle bracket. That's not a problem until you get to spec. But make sure both sides are within spec. That's the most important thing to do. Let me begin here now. There's a bunch of different ways to actually compress. What you want to do is you want to compress this piston in, so when you take the whole assembly out, the whole caliper, you're going to have enough clearance to put the bigger brake pads. Because if you don't compress the piston in here and you put the new brake pads, and the piston's out to compensate for the brake pad wear. So you're not going to have enough room to actually fit this down on the rotor. Another thing to note here is there's sensors on these pads, these disc brake pads. So you want, if you hear like a squeaky noise and it goes away when you press the brake, that's an indication that your pads, it's hitting the sensor and the pads are low. So you can also look at it to see if it's close to the sensor. If you have squeaky brakes, for example, it could be a shiny spot on the rotor. The rotor could be a little your lateral run out, it could be a little warped. So you could put a dial indicator in here to see the amount of warpage. Also, when you turn them, when you turn the rotor itself and you hear kss, 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 that could also mean it's warped. Or if you're driving and you hear like a kss, kss type of noise, that could also mean it's warped. There's a bunch of different ways. It could also be warped if you're actually going above 60 miles an hour and you press the brake and you feel pulsation on your brake pedal. That could also mean they're warped. So let's begin here. There's different ways of compressing that piston. One way is with a big C-clamp, or you could use a disc brake pad spreader, something like this. Or certain vehicles also require you to turn the actual piston inside the actual caliper with one of these bad boys. You put a 3/8 drive in here, and these tabs go inside to the grooves inside the actual piston, and you turn it and press in and it goes in. For example, I had a 91 Lumina that I need to do that way. So always check with your manufacturers what they recommend you to do, how to do on your vehicle. So let's go ahead and open the C-clamp. Now where I'm going to put the C-clamp is one on the top of the actual caliper housing, and the other end is going to go right in here, right there, that little hole in there. So let's go ahead and do that. And since I have this outside the car, let me catch all the brake fluid that's going to spill out. And always keep in mind, if you spill brake fluid on paint, it's going to take it off. So be careful with brake fluid. Right. I'm compressing this piston in. Do it all the way in so you can't go anymore. Alright, so it should be good. As you can see, I went in a lot. You can see here how much in I went. You see that little gap in there? Next thing you'd want to do is take these caliper bolts out, the sliders, and that is a 3/8 hex Allen type of a bit. Now if you can't get those off, you might want to spray some lubricating, penetrating oil in there. And also when you take the caliper off, what I like to do is get a clothes hanger, straighten it out, and hang the caliper away so you could do a brake job. Once you're done with it, you could use it again. Take it off the actual hanger. I don't like hanging the caliper off the actual brake hose. It's not recommended. So let me undo that. Also, another thing that we should do, since we're here, is take this actual clip out over here that's holding the actual caliper, the actual brake hose in place. You could just take some needle nose pliers and put it where the clip is. There's a clip right here. You can see that. I just put the needle nose pliers in where the clip is and just pull it out. That's what that clip looks like. And that's where I put the needle nose pliers in there. And that just slides right out. The bottom, you push it down the bottom, then out. Now, when you take the sliders out, take a look at them. If they look like there's nothing wrong with them, usually they're good. Or if it's like fine, really fine surface rust or something like that, you could sand it down a little bit. But be very careful. Any inclination, or if you have any doubts in your head that in your mind that something's not right with these, or have a lot of corrosion or something, always buy new ones. And on these, what I like to do is use brake cleaner, clean them up. Maybe some really fine sandpaper them down. Then before putting them in, I use some brake caliper grease. Again, auto parts dealer. And you use a liberal amount on these. That's about right. And just put that in there. And back on your car. Alright. Let's move forward. Also, you'd also want to put some grease in where the actual sleeves are. And wherever that slider goes onto, also put caliper grease on. So let's take this off. So this is the actual where you want to put some grease in there. You can see that's a sleeve. Push that out. What I do sometimes is I also take the sleeve out and I go in there maybe with a little bit of fine sandpaper, real fine sandpaper, and brake fluid, brake cleaner, and spray it in there and clean it. Same thing in here. Then lubricate the whole thing up with inside it out, the whole sleeve, inside it out, inside the ears in here. Lubricate it with the caliper grease. Same thing in here. And basically also wherever the actual slider goes through. So this is how this works. It goes through here and holds everything in place like that. So what you want to do is you want to put some grease inside these tabs of the brake pad too. Okay? Wherever this contacts, pretty much. Let me show you real quick how to use this pad splitter. If you have one of these, you pretty much put it in here. Hold on a second, let me open this up real quick. Now be careful because some cars you can't use this on. So I like just to have everything, but 90% of the time you could get away with just a big C-clamp, to be honest with you. And that's how that sits in there. And you just turn and you clamp down the piston as far in as you can. You just turn and the piston goes in. Now let me take this out. And this thing, like I said before, on certain cars, you're going to see in here where the piston goes, you're going to see holes that you can put that piston tool in, and you turn it and it pushes it in. A couple things to note here. You see the way these pads are beveled over here at the end? Some pads aren't. Now if you hear screeching when you're braking, it's really bad. There might be an edge here. So if you grind this edge down a little bit, create like a bevel here, that might go away. Because that's it's sort of like nails when you're like a chalkboard or something like that, akin to that. And make sure you always put the clips back on. It depends. Some cars, some brake pads come with the clip on it already. Some don't. So this is what it looks like when you take it off. And always put, on the back of the brake pad, always put disc brake quiet. Because what happens is, if the pad, when the pad engages, and it moves very slightly when you're braking, you create a screeching noise. So make sure you liberally coat the whole back of the pad with that stuff. And always put all the brackets on, just like when you remove them. This goes in that hole, and there's clips here that hold it to the top. So the bottom goes in first, looks like on this. And something like that. Anyway, you get the point. There you go. Clipped in. That's how it goes. Every car has different brackets in the back, so be careful when you're doing that. Another thing to keep in mind, what I like to do is, once you put this back in, put this back in here. So I could show you what I'm talking about. Alright, you see these tabs here on top? These two tabs? Let me see if you can see that. One here and one here. Now these tabs should be bent downwards. What I mean by that is, this is the way I do it. Have somebody, once you assemble everything back on, have somebody press on the brakes. But make sure this is moved up in the top position, so there's clearance in here in these tabs, just like that. See that clearance? Now, when the person steps on the brakes, these are gonna be firmly in place. Now, once that is firmly in place, I like to get a screwdriver and hammer that down. So, the same thing here. It'll keep the pad from moving. Sometimes, if you don't do that, when you're braking, you're going to hear something like this. So that's what that is. It's very important. Another thing here that I like to do is, everywhere that this actual pad touches, for example, it's going to move back and forth here. This whole side face over here, I would lightly sand down and clean it up with brake cleaner. Wherever the pad, on other vehicles, wherever the pad metal goes back and forth on the caliper and it rubs, clean it up with some fine sandpaper, or if there's gunk on it, you can always take a flathead and just scrape it off, or a scraper. And once you do that, put some caliper grease anywhere that metal touches back and forth from the brake pad to the actual caliper. Make sure you don't get any grease on the actual pad itself. If you do, it's not the end of the world. Make sure you use a lot of brake cleaner to take it off. I think that's all I have to say here. And remember, always hang this on top with some sort of wire. Like I said before, I use a coat hanger, straightened out, and just hang that up. Okay, another thing here, these are the tabs I was talking about. I don't know if you could see that. These tabs here. So if the clearance is too tight, you might want to file it down a little bit here to get the proper clearance. Some cars also, if you have the brake pads that go back and forth on the bracket, it's metal-to-metal contact, brake cleaner it, sandpaper it really lightly, make sure it's nice and smooth, then put some caliper grease on that. And this car, the actual rotor is held in place with a hub here, and there's a nut in here, and there's bearings in here. So I think that's all I have to say about that. Oh, also, if you find that your actual wheel gets stuck on this rotor, some people, what they do is they sand it down real lightly, you clean it up, then you put some Antiseize on it, wherever the surface touches the actual rim, so it won't stick to it. Now another spec you need to keep in mind is when you put these sliders back in, you should tighten them down to 37 foot-pounds of torque. And what you could do is you get yourself a torque wrench. This one's from Harbor Freight. And by the way, Carcraft did, I think it was, let's see, where are we now? April or March edition of 2013, Carcraft did a comparison between Harbor Freight's actual torque wrench versus the good name brands like Snap-on and stuff like that, and they were very, very close. So this you could pick up for, I think I paid, don't quote me, maybe 20, 30 bucks, I don't remember, but this wasn't that expensive. Now how this works is, over here you loosen it down here, and you move it back and forth, and over here is inch-pounds, I believe. Sorry, foot-pounds here. You have foot-pounds, and you go all the way up to, you turn this until it says 30 here and 7 here in the middle. It's pretty self-explanatory. And it clicks once you get it right. I think that's all I have to say about that. If you have any questions, well, the reversal, when you put it back in. Oh, one more thing. Other cars, this is basically the reverse process when you put it back on. Make sure you put the sliders in where they were, and you have the whole assembly here together, and all the brackets holding everything in place. And make sure when you put it back on, everything lines up, the sleeves line up, and there's no clearance issues. Another thing also, when you put this back on, certain other cars, there's there's a bracket that bolts onto the spindle that holds the caliper bracket and the actual caliper bracket itself. On those cars, I like to take just the caliper bracket off it and do what you gotta do, what I mentioned before, put the pads back on and put it back on. This one here also has a bleeder screw, that's what it looks like, and that is a 10mm. So what I like to do is, there's different ways of doing this when you bleed the brakes. I'll talk about this real quick now. You could buy like a little brake bleeding kit, something like this. It comes like a little bottle, clear see-through bottle, and you just put these little adapters in there inside the hole like so, and you see the fluid come out. Now whatever you use, you can also put this like in a big water bottle, the other end, so you could catch everything. Make sure though whatever you use, it's a clear type of hose, so you can see if there's any bubbles left in the system. And this one here is a 10mm. I would start bleeding from the farthest caliper from the master cylinder first, working your way to the closest. And there's different ways to bleed them. You can have somebody in the car, foot in the brake, and hold it down. Then you unscrew it. Watch it flow down, and as the brake pedal goes down, then you tighten it back down, so no air goes back in the system. Then again, have you do the same thing, follow over and over again. There's also machines you could use, or pumps. Some pumps you hook it up to the actual master cylinder, and you open all the bleeders, or you could gravity bleed it. and it pushes everything through. Gravity bleed, some people do also. They just open these things and let it all the air come out. Speed bleeders they sell, which have like a little check valve in here. You just open them up and fill the brake fluid and everything squirts out. All you gotta do is just take this off and insert the speed bleeder in there. So this is what that looks like, if you ever wondered. There's vacuum pumps that you could use over here to suck fluid in. And make sure you do this until you feel good pedal. Oh, also, let me take this out for you guys. And this down here is a 7/16. This is where the hose is. That's a 7/16 bolt. So you put a bolt in there like that. Alright. Let me show you what that looks like. Where the hose goes. I'd like to know where the hose go. Can somebody tell me? Alright, now whenever you take this off, it is recommended you put a new one back on, a new inlet fitting, and also brand new copper washers in here. This is like a banjo style in here. And this is a special bolt. You can see the holes in there. And it goes through here, the actual brake fluid from in here, and it goes into the actual caliper. So this is a special bolt in here. Make sure if you do replace this bolt, it's this type of bolt, very important. And the reversal is opposite of removal. Also, like I said, any steel to steel contact between the pads and the caliper is also up here, I believe. Down through here, it slides back and forth. Sand it down lightly and put some grease, some caliper grease. Same thing on the other side. I think that completes our brake tutorial. Thanks for watching my channel. Please subscribe to my channel. It's free to subscribe. You check the box underneath. You know you want to. And like me on Facebook and Twitter. That's also free. Just click the box underneath. Also, I peruse the boards of NewYork3rdGen.com. Go to www.nythirdgen.com. That's my car club. You'll see some of the nicest and fastest 3rd gen Camaros and Firebirds, like the one in the background, in the New York area. So thanks for watching and take care.